Please rewind this cassette.
Alright, folks. We have peace forming in the Middle East under Trump. Okay, gang? Coming up upon this most heated election year. Alright? It's pretty tense. Everybody, what's going to happen? It's COVID year. Alright, folks? But before we get into all that, let's talk about a word from our sponsor. Alright? Do you struggle with finding time to make dinner, gang? Alright, well, with Blue Apron, you can have everything sent to you for 5 weekly payments of $595. Alright? You don't have to go to the grocery store. You don't have to look up a recipe online. They send you the food. They send you the recipes. You make it. Only takes about 25 minutes. I have it with my wife and my children. It's great. We eat it a few times a week. It's top value from Blue Apron, gang. So tonight, I'm going to be going out and celebrating this Satanist holiday with my wife, who's a doctor. She's going to be dressed up as a doctor because that's what she is. She's a doctor, gang. All right? But the thing to focus on, folks, is to not be distracted by certain YouTubers who like to mock people like me for my sponsorships and what I do here on the Daily Wire. This is what these people want, folks. This is how these people are. All right? They want to keep you distracted from the real issues. And the real issues are only addressed here, Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro. Okay, folks? Don't listen to them. The haunted house movie. A genre that is too often turned into generic trash. For every Shining, we get a dozen straight-to-video movies with some girl walking around a house until all of a sudden there's a loud noise. Kill me. Before the horror boom of the last decade, I had found myself hungry for a return to form of this genre. Then out of nowhere, Dimension Films got the idea to adapt Stephen King's short story, 1408, into a feature film. I remember the trailers for this film back in 2007, and right away the premise had you hooked. A skeptical author stays in a haunted hotel room to see if there's anything really there. Wait, John Cusack's in this? Holy shit, Sam Jackson? Is this real? Let's take a trip back to 2007, when I was 17 years old, and spend a night in 1408. This is Halloween Rewind. "1408" was directed by Mikael Hafström, at the time well known for his Swedish film Evil. It's disappointing where his career went after this, but when this movie came out, it seemed like he was going to be a major Hollywood talent. This movie was a classic sleeper hit, receiving good reviews and performing well at the box office. I saw it a couple of times, once in a regular cinema, and then the second time was a double feature at a drive-in. What drew me to this movie was my man Johnny C., my favorite actor of all time, who crushes it in the lead role as Mike Enslin. Mike's had a lot of tragedy in his life, the most recent one being the death of his young daughter. In his early career, he wrote a dramatic novel about the relationship he had with his father, but then finds commercial success with a series of books where he stays in haunted locations and covers his experiences with the sardonic and cynical tone. He also rates every place with like a skull rating, like 3 out of 5 skulls. I love the early scenes of this movie. I could watch a whole hour of Cusack just doing book signings. This stuff feels very realistic if you've ever been to like a convention or a book signing or a film festival or anything like this. And I really can't think of another actor who could have done as good of a job with this material. It feels written for him, and he carries the film with his easygoing charisma. This movie reminds me a lot of Stir of Echoes, the David Koepp film, in the way it uses so many of the classic tricks and cliches, but with good dialogue and pacing, they don't feel as cliche as they should and would in lesser hands. As soon as Cusack gets to the hotel and meets up with Sam Jackson, the movie is immediately filled with atmosphere. You're in that hotel room with him, and the way things play out keep you on the edge for the majority of its runtime. I will say, I do dig the slow burn of the first half, and this is where I think 1408 is at its strongest. Waiting for something to happen is always scarier than anything the filmmakers can show us. But after things get going, the movie turns into a series of set pieces with really impressive camera work and special effects, but from that point on, it stops being a slow burn and becomes more of like a roller coaster ride. From a technical standpoint, I don't really have any issue with this movie. Even the sound design is pretty great. What elevates this from a typical ghost story is that Stephen King touch of character. Throughout the night, Mike only becomes more complex as he begins to realize what's happening is real, and the dread of knowing he's trapped in this room is just absolutely horrifying. We get hints of his past, and the room is using his pain to destroy him from the inside. There's a sense of humor to this movie's tone, almost self-aware in what it is and what it's trying to do. The sarcastic bite keeps it all from getting goofy. I like when supernatural movies start out with a more grounded approach and then slowly fall into the chaos and the existential crises. Because Mike doesn't believe in anything, we have an easier time buying into this concept. For me personally, I can easily relate to going out with friends to find ghosts in a so-called haunted house. Sure, you end up having fun and sometimes you might get creeped out by something minor, but nothing ever really happens, and you never see a ghost. Yet, I know that part of me always wants something to happen. Could you imagine if you actually saw a ghost? That would change the way you live your life. Everything you think about humanity and what we are would be flipped on its head. So, I like to live in the fantasy of this movie, a skeptic who gets access to the other side. Now, until I have this experience myself, I will continue to make fun of the idea of ghosts being real. I could go into individual scenes or Mike's character development, but that's not really the joy of watching 1408. This movie works like a play, and it's a real one-man show for Cusack to remind everyone why he became a movie star in the first place. This was one of his last big movies as a leading man. There's 3 endings, and I personally prefer the theatrical one. It's so understated and creepy, while the director's cut ending always comes across as silly to me and very Stephen King kind of silly, which sort of reminds me of the ending of the most recent Doctor Sleep. I'm not knocking anyone who prefers the director's cut, but it's just not for me. This is a rare time where I agree with the test audiences who got the ending changed, and I'm glad that it changed. I think it's a much better ending, and it just, like I said, it's understated, it's subtle, and that's what makes it work, and I think makes it more effective. This is one of those movies I used to show my friends all the time. I remember many nights in my late teens where someone would come over and I would say, hey, let's pop in 1408. This would always include Mountain Dew and pizza rolls. So of course I was incredibly unhealthy. So is it perfect? Well, no. The second half isn't as good as the first, and there's a couple of fake-out moments that I don't think work very well. Another issue is that you're always getting this feeling in the back of your head that there's an even better movie to be made out of this. The one we got is great, but it could be a classic if it just had a little bit more in its screenplay and a little bit more in the second half of it. It really could be an all-time classic movie, and it's just not quite at that level. It's right below that level. Special shout out to Peter Boyle, not the father from Everybody Loves Raymond, for his tight and clever editing. I really think the editing is the key to this movie. This is a cerebral and economical film made with great craft and wit. It's one of the best haunted house movies of the last 20 years, and despite it being a hit at the time, I think it's become oddly underrated in recent years. So go back and give it a rewatch. 1408 is a must-see for fans of Cusack and Stephen King, and it's certainly better than that piece of shit Cell. Alright guys, well that's it for Halloween Rewind. I hope you enjoyed this series as much as I enjoyed making it, and I can't wait to see you next year. So, this is Pat signing out. God. I wish they knew how much I actually hate them. Who can it be now? Shit. I didn't order this. Huh. Who do I know that's associated with Blue Apron? This stuff costs like $100 a box. It can't be. Shapiro. It can't be. She's a Jew.
Hey folks.
The Democrats are in full-scale panic, and they should be.